Hey everybody, it's Charles, your hobby hero, and today we're going to be looking at the top 10 cards that I think are underperforming right now, but will get better with future sets. Now, if you haven't already though, please hit that subscribe button. We are almost to our 500 subscriber benchmark, so thank you very much. If you haven't already entered into the contest, make sure you check out the video here to get entered to win that free playmat as well. Now, with the addition of future sets, we know that a lot of these cards that we have in set 1 are going to get more support. Now, these are a list of cards that I think right now really don't have the support that you would hope that they would have, but going into future sets, I could see these cards becoming real MVPs of the format, if not at least very good role players in their respective decks. Now keep in mind, I'm not going to really be including any cards on here that are already very dominant in the meta, even though I'm sure some of them will get better as well. This is really just going to be focusing on the cards that really have either failed to meet expectations or really just aren't performing up to the capacity that I think they'll be able to in future sets. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start with number 1. And number 1 on our list is going to be Beast's Mirror. This item right here allows you to draw a card for the cost of exerting it and 3 ink, but only if your hand is already empty. So far, this card has not really seen a ton of play since the full spoilers have been released. A lot of that having to do with the fact that A Whole New World is kind of the benchmark for a lot of the steel decks that are looking to refill their hands. Now, I could easily see a format in the future where steel is just this very aggressive, hand disrupting, drop everything out of your hand type playstyle, and this card being able to draw a card each turn for slightly less than the Magic Mirror can currently, and being inkable on top of that, I think could really carve out a spot for this in a lot of steel decks going forward in future sets. Right now, it has seen some fringe play, but for the most part, it has been relegated to the bulk piles at this point in time. So this is a card to keep your eyes on. Again, being a common, this one's not going to shoot up in value, but if you've got some foil copies of this card, maybe worth holding on. All right, number 2 on this list, this is going to be Hades, Lord of the Underworld. Now, this rare being an uninkable 4-drop that allows you to get a character back from your discard pile back to your hand has seen some play in a couple of the builds. This card being uninkable, I think, has really hurt it up until this point in time, and really just not having enough good targets in most decks to get back. There are a lot of role players that are out there, but none of them are usually irreplaceable for a deck that are just so heavily focused on one character that this guy really needs to be included to make sure you can recurve that character if and when you need to. Now, with the addition of extra cards in future sets, that could and most likely will change. We will probably be seeing a lot more builds focused around very specific synergies. They've already said that set 1 was going to be keeping things very simple so people could learn and come into play. I think set 2, we're going to start seeing a lot more synergies, a lot of focus of things that are in play and need to stay in play, or even just some very, very good come into play abilities on lower costed characters to where we could see this guy really emerging as a staple 4 of in the format. His interaction with the large Hades is also not to be underestimated, and I do think that this is a character that we see maybe coming from just a very small impact role in the decks that he is present to really being a star-studded character as a 4 of in a lot of Amber decks going forward. All right, number 3 on the list is Just in Time, and Just in Time is probably the most prevalent card on this list. I know there are a lot of lemon lime lists that are out there that are playing this card as a 4 of already. I am not a fan of that, and I have been outspoken about why I don't like that card. I think currently right now it is a very underpowered card. Best case scenario, you are 2-for-1ing yourself to jump ahead 2 turns with a 5-drop on turn 3 and just hoping that they can't immediately answer it with 1 card from their hand. And then it's a terrible top deck, and there just aren't enough 5-drops right now that this card really makes shine. You really got to put a lot of subpar 5-drops into your deck that really just aren't helping your win condition, and hopefully you have one of those really awesome 5-drops in your hand whenever you do have this on turn 3. and I just don't think that's good enough right now. Now, obviously with the addition of new sets, we will have more 5-drops that they are making. This is a really powerful spot, and they have already kind of started pushing the envelope of what a 5-drop can be in this set. I think with future sets, we're going to see more powerful 5-drops. That's just how the nature of these card games usually go, and that can increase the value of a card like this. If we start seeing 4 lore generating 5-drops, or we start seeing more ward characters in that 4 and 5 even drop spots, I think this card becomes a much more appealing type of card to put in a deck. This card on 3 into a ward character like Cusco, but having another option like another ward character that generates 3 lore would make this card an absolute MVP for those aggro type decks that would be able to run both of them. With the addition of those cards, almost guaranteed to be in the future sets, I can definitely see this card becoming a much more valuable asset for those decks. All right, number 4 on this list is going to be Dr. Facilier, Agent Provocateur. Now, this guy has been somewhat playable in some of the top tier decks in the Ruby Amethyst control list. Some were running 1 or 2 copies of this guy. Sometimes in the more budget-friendly versions, they were running a full 4 set of him. And I don't think that he's a bad card per se right now. I just don't think that there's a ton of ways to generate real value with him. Now, obviously, being able to trigger something like a Maleficent off of his ability, it feels absolutely great. Being able to reoccur multiple Rafikis in the same turn and an opponent's big board feels really good as well. But outside of those, there's not a ton of cards that you're going to get a lot of return on investment for with this particular character. Now, with the addition of more cards in future sets, we may be able to squeeze some more value out of this ability. This recursion ability to play and replay and capitalize on those either enter the battlefield effects or effects that could trigger that we see in the future where characters are banished and have effects. Those additional characters coming in could really help push this guy to a staple 4 of in a lot of decks, especially whenever he is able to shift off of not 1 but 2 really decent characters at lower cost to make sure that we hit this guy right on curve. All right, now we're at the midway point of the list with Ariel the Who's It Collector. Now, this character is really being held back right now by, I think, the quality of items that we see, especially in Sapphire. Right now, the items, and I think they did this intentionally to kind of gauge how powerful items would be, they are permanent effects that don't have to dry, unlike the characters in the game. And I do think that they were very cautious, overly cautious in a lot of scenarios on how powerful these items were. And I do think because of that, this card really suffers because you're really forced to play really suboptimal items to really capitalize on her ability. Even as such, I have seen some fringe decks that have absolutely been able to put out some insane turns with this particular card. Now, with the addition of future sets and what we would naturally assume a power creep in those items' abilities, this card becomes a much more appealing and appetizing kind of win condition for those blue item decks. The addition of the Eye of Fates to make her lore generation 2 instead of a 1, or however many Eye of Fates you have, is also a very nice piece whenever you can start playing items that are in your deck that actually accomplish something towards your win condition rather than are just in the deck as a way to untap this particular Ariel. Now, with the addition of hopefully better items in future sets, we could see this 4-drop really being a second win condition for a lot of those Sapphire decks right now that are looking for kind of that alternate to either the Bell or the Tamatoa win condition, and having something that hits a little bit earlier and can put some pressure on your opponent may just be that piece. All right, number 6 on our list is our first and only legendary addition to this list, and that is Beast Wolvesbane. Now, this particular character is not a bad card, and I do think if he were just inkable right now, he would probably see a lot of inclusion in decks as a 4/4 rusher with a possible upside to activate his roar ability. But without having that ability to be inkable, he is just competing with too many really good cards that are a necessity for those green decks, and they can't really support the additional uninkable, especially for an ability that's really not going to be relevant in most games. The pairing that he is best with too is steel, and we haven't really seen a super successful combination of these steel and emerald colors as of yet, which has really left this guy kind of on the outside looking in compared to all the other legendaries that are out there right now. Now, with the addition of new cards coming in future sets, we may find a very easy way to activate this guy's ability. If we start seeing characters that come into play and deal damage to opposing characters, something like this could see much more play. Also, if we see a deck that arises with Emerald that doesn't really suffer from the overabundance or lack of space for an uninkable card, this guy could find a home there. Rush is a very powerful effect, and a 4/4 rusher on 5 is not a bad stat line. Especially when you take into consideration he can also quest for 2 whenever he's not coming into rush and just immediately take out another character. The likelihood of additional cards being added to the game to help damage characters to make his roar effect more applicable, combined with the fact that there's also a high likelihood that that uninkable spot may open up for Emerald decks in the future, has me very high on the future of this particular legendary. Alright, number 7 on our list is going to be Mulan, the Imperial Soldier. Now this is a card, when I originally saw it spoiled, I was very high on this effect. Now when Red actually materialized and fully fleshed out its set spoiler, it really ended up being more of a high-end control color than an aggressive lore generating color. They don't have a lot of 2 lore generators. Now all that can change in future sets. If we can see lower costed, higher lore generating characters in Ruby going forward, or even just some additional synergy in Ruby to help it pair better with some of the more aggressive colors like Emerald or Amber, this card could absolutely start seeing some real effects. It already has plenty of support inside Amber to reactivate her ability with cards like LeFou or Shield of Virtue, to where we could see her challenging multiple times in a turn, combined with colors like Amber that would have the healing effects of Rapunzel and the high lore generation characters of the lower end. We could absolutely see this deck become a monster lore generating deck with just a little bit more support in future sets. Now the fact that this card is given out in the gift boxes, this card's not ever going to shoot up crazy high in prices, but maybe one of those cards that you want to secure now while it is at a very low price in case it does pick up in popularity with future sets. All right, now we're on to our top 3, and number 3 in that spot is going to be Mother Gothel, the Selfish Manipulator. Now, this super rare has the most broken ability in this game. It basically says while she is exerted, your opponents cannot win, and they cannot advance their win condition. There is no way for them to generate lore, minus, I think right now, Aladdin is the only way for them to generate lore. If he's able to challenge something and defeat it that turn, he does still gain lore. But aside from that, she is an absolute monster. Her stat line is not terrible as a 2 lore generator with 6 willpower. She can absolutely survive a challenge or 2 on her own. Her biggest detraction right now is she really just doesn't have enough ways to protect her. You have Aurora in Sapphire that can give her ward, which allows her to not be immediately taken out by something like a Dragon's Fire. And then you have your bodyguards and your other colors, which can help support her inside from being challenged from your opponent's characters that are on the board. Now, if there's something in the future set that can either just give her ward while still allowing her to be played in colors with bodyguard, or if Emerald itself or Sapphire itself picks up some bodyguards in future sets, this card could become an absolute nightmare for the meta to deal with, because with her in play, you literally cannot do anything. If you can't challenge her directly, you basically have a blank turn. So look out for future sets. If there becomes more support to protect this particular character, she could absolutely change the entire format in and of herself due to her ability. All right, next one out of our top 3 is Moana of Montanui. Now this is a character that a lot of people were trying to test with before the full spoiler was released. And unfortunately, she really just didn't get the princess support we were hoping we would see. Now, she does have some synergy with a few of the princesses that have been revealed, but unfortunately, the princesses, especially the really good princesses, are pretty spread out across different colors. Now, with the addition of more sets, we're going to see more princesses in those colors, and it may just take a few princesses in the right colors of ink to really make this character shine. Her ability to restand all your princesses is both twofold, but the fact that she can protect you if you are questing aggressively with your princesses by restanding all of them and keeping them from being challenged, but also if you have any other princesses who can either sing songs that turn, challenge that turn for effects, that really opens up a lot of playstyles for this particular character. Being a 3 lore generator at 5 is very nice as well. She's a little understated from her original stat line, but if we can really get value out of her untap ability in future sets, she could be an absolute rock star for Amber. All right, now for my number 1 pick for the card that I think will absolutely blow up with the addition of future sets, and that is going to be Hades, King of Olympus. Now, this is a card that I was extremely stoked for whenever they spoiled it, and I absolutely told myself I was going to build this deck. There was no way it was going to keep me awake, especially when they revealed that shift. Whenever someone shifted, they would be able to come in and quest that turn as long as the character they were shifting from had been in play for a turn as well. I thought that this was absolutely going to be the best deck in the format. Then the full set was spoiled, and Amber got no additional support. And when I say no, I mean none. The only other villains that are in Amber is the other smaller Hades that you're going to want to shift up from for this particular Hades, which really hurts the deck because that forces you to take all your villains from another ink color right now, and unfortunately that forces you to play with a very limited card pool and have to make some really subpar choices for your deck construction. Also, once your opponent sees it, the smaller Hades is pretty fragile and can be taken out pretty easily to slow down the whole tempo of the deck. But with future sets, we are 100% going to get more villains. If we get more villains, really in any ink color, even if Amber still gets 0, it may be able enough to push that other ink color to where it pairs very nicely with this Hades package. And that with that Hades package allows you to do is basically just come in and generate an obscene amount of lore seemingly out of nowhere. Now, your opponents will see it coming after the first time you do it, but it's one of the few ways that we have in the game right now to really generate a large amount of lore in a turn without your opponents having a direct way to interact with it. You can keep your smaller Hades standing up the turn before so he is not challengeable, and if they don't address him, he can come down and then generate, instead of 1 lore, any number of lore based on the number of villains that you have in play. We have a number of good villains already and a couple of color combinations like Sapphire and an Amethyst, and if those colors themselves get some additional villains in the future sets, that may be all that Amber needs. And if Amber can get some additional villains in an additional set, that may really help to push this deck over the top. I am super excited for the opportunity to play this guy in future sets, and I'm absolutely holding on to a play set of him right now just for whenever set 2 drops. Hopefully we have enough support for him then, but every set that comes out is going to give us new villains and a new opportunity to make a deck with this guy, which is why he is number 1 on my list for cards that will be better in future sets. So there you guys have it. There's my list of top 10 undervalued cards that I think have the best chance to get better with future sets. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below, as well as cards that you think will be better in future sets as well. And until next time, guys, Hobby Hero out.